A boundary marker, border marker, boundary stone, or border stone is a robust physical marker that identifies the start of a land boundary or the change in a boundary, especially a change in direction of a boundary. There are several other types of named border markers, known as pillars, obelisks, and corners. Border markers can also be markers through which a border line runs in a straight line to determine that border. They can also be the markers from which a border marker has been fixed. Purpose. According to Josiah Ober, boundary markers are a way of imposing human, cultural, social meanings upon a once undifferentiated natural environment. Boundary markers are linked to social hierarchies, since they derive the meaning from the authority of a person or group to declare the limits of a given space of land for political, social or religious reasons. Ober notes that determining who can use parcels of arable land and for what purpose has immediate and obvious economic implications. Many borders were drawn along invisible lines of latitude or longitude, which often created a need to mark these borders on the ground as accurately as possible, using the technology of the day. Advances in GPS technology have shown that there are many borders inaccurately marked on the ground. Boundary markers have often been used to mark critical points on political boundaries, i.e., those between countries, states or local administrations, but have also been used to mark out the limits of private land holdings, especially in areas where fences or walls are impractical or unnecessary. In developed countries, the use of markers for land ownership has in many places been replaced by maps and land ownership registration. Boundary markers are not legal markers in Western countries and may have troublesome legal effects. However, boundary markers have legal meaning in Japan, and are generally installed across the country. Markers are still used extensively for marking international borders, which are traditionally classified into two categories: natural boundaries, correlating to topographical features such as rivers or mountain ranges, and artificial boundaries, which have no obvious relation to topography. The latter category includes borders defined by boundary markers such as stones and walls. International boundary markers are placed and can be maintained by mutual agreement of the bordering countries. Construction. Boundary markers, traditionally, were often made of stone, but later many have been made with concrete or a mixture of materials. They are typically placed at a notable or especially visible point. Many are inscribed with relevant information such as the abbreviation of the boundary holder and often a date. History. Asia. China. The oldest known boundary stone in China is from Jiangsu province, dating from 12 AD. It bears the inscription, "The sea area from Jiaozhou Bay to the east of Gahan County belongs to Langyusha, and the waters from the south of Gahan County to the east of the estuary of Guanay River belongs to Donghaisha." More recently, the border between Russia and China was formally demarcated with boundary stones as the result of the Treaty of Kyakhta in 1727. In the 19th century, stones were used to outline the limits of the international settlement in Shanghai, Thailand. In ancient Thailand, sacred boundary stones called semahin delimited Buddhist temple precincts. In some cases they feature inscriptions recounting the history of the temple. Others were carved with wheels of the law, while some specimens consist of unfinished stone. In addition to temples, sema could enclose statues of Buddha or sacred mounds. Near East and Africa, Palestine. According to B. S. Jackson, stones were put in place in ancient Israel to mark the boundary of a territory. and to seek to deter potential violators of that boundary through the use of threats. The Hebrew Bible contains a strict prohibition against the unauthorized displacement or removal of boundary markers. Egypt. An example of boundary markers in ancient Egypt were the boundary stellae of Akhenaten. They defined the limits of the sacred city of Akhenaten, built by Akhenaten as the center of the art and religious cult which he founded. Egyptologists categorize the stellae based on whether they are inscribed with the earlier proclamation, a general explanation of why the location was selected and how the city would be designed, or the later proclamation, which provides additional details about the perimeters of the city. Europe. Greece. The earliest reference to a boundary stone in Greek literature is in the Iliad, which describes the goddess Athena using one as a projectile. Boundary stones, known as horis, could be made of either carved or undressed stones, and were typically inscribed with the Greek word horis. One such stone was used to indicate the edge of the Athenian agora. The practice of separating areas of land with boundary stones, though common, was widely considered by classical writers to be a violation of the principle of communal land ownership. Rome. In ancient Roman religion, the god Terminus was worshipped as the patron god of boundary markers. Ovid, in a hymn directed to the god, wrote, "O Terminus, whether thou art a stone or a stump buried in the field, thou dost set bounds to people and cities and vast kingdoms." Numa Pompilius made the first Roman law requiring boundary stones around private property and instituting capital punishment for anyone found guilty of moving these stones. Monaco. In 1828, the Principality of Monaco and the Kingdom of Piedmont Sardinia established a physical border with 91 boundary stones, each numbered 1 to 91, running along the border from present-day Fontvieille to Menton-Garavan. Prior to 1848, the Principality of Monaco included the villages of Roquebrune, Monty, Garavan and Menton. Of the original 91 boundary stones, only 12 remain, 6 within the Principality of Monaco, 3 in Roquebrune Cap Martin, and 3 in Menton. The boundary stones numbered 9, 12, 15, and 31 are located in Monaco. Another stone has been cast in concrete in the Saint-Cécile area of Monaco, thus rendering its number illegible. Stone number 55, originally located in Roquebrune, was given as a gift from the city of Roquebrune to the Principality of Monaco and is now located in Monaco's City Hall. Stones numbered 56, 57, and 58 are located in Roquebrune. Stones numbered 62, 71, and 73 are located in Menton. All the boundary stones have 3 engraved sides, one side with their individual numbers, one side with the letter M indicating Monaco's territory, and one side with a cross indicating the Kingdom of Piedmont Sardinia's territory. The cross represents the coat of arms of the House of Savoy, rulers of Piedmont Sardinia. Western Australia. The history of marking the Western Australian border on the ground states that the Austral Pillar and the Deakin Pillar are points used to determine the position east of Greenwich and then fix a border from, in this case used to determine the line of the 129th meridian east longitude, as the Western Australian border. The Deakin obelisk and the Kimberley obelisk in Australia are used in a slightly different way, in that a line is run north and south through point on the obelisks, formed by a copper plug embedded into the top center of the concrete obelisks. The corners in Australia, such as Cameron Corner, Haddon Corner, Purple Corner, and Surveyor General's Corner, are where multiple borders meet or a border changes direction. United States, Hawaii. The basic unit of the ancient Hawaiian land division system was the ahapira, a self-sustaining agricultural district. The places where a road crossed the border of an ahapira were marked with distinctive altars, known as ahua piles. These altars served not only as boundary markers but also as sites for the performance of religious rituals related to land taxation. Christus J. Lyons, an early surveyor of Hawaii, recorded that upon this altar at the annual progress of the Aku Makahiki was deposited the tax paid by the land whose boundary it marked, and also an image of a hog, Puaa, carved out of kukui wood and stained with red ochre. From this came the name ahapira. Naturally occurring landscape features were also used as points of reference for district borders. Washington, D.C. The original boundaries of the District of Columbia were marked using boundary stones. These were made of saw-cut sandstone blocks and stood 2 feet high when set in the ground. 10 boundary stones were placed along each side of the 100-square-mile District of Columbia. Although the original surveyors intended each side to be 10 miles long, the measurements were often inaccurate, resulting in the sometimes significant misplacement of stones and the overall skewing of the district boundaries. Some of these discrepancies are intentional, because the ground at the exact mile point was covered in water in such cases. Andrew Ellicott, the leader of the surveying crew, noted in 1793, "The stones are placed on the nearest firm ground and the true distance in miles and poles is marked on them. Information engraved on the stones includes the number of the stone within the sequence on that side of the district, the date of placement, and the words jurisdiction of the United States." Quote, "In the 20th century, the Daughters of the American Revolution voluntarily took responsibility for preserving the stones, which had fallen victim to vandalization and urban development. In the late 1990s, renewed interest in the boundary stones led to increased preservation efforts by the DAR and other organizations." Other states. In 1773, a Franciscan friar named Francisco Palu erected the first boundary marker between Alta and Baja California. Commissioned by the Spanish crown, it consisted of a cross made from alder wood and placed standing upright on a rock. In the British colonies, milestones were shipped from England to mark the Mason-Dixon line. A block cut from sandstone was placed at the intersection of Wyoming, Colorado and Utah in 1879, and stone posts were used along the western border of South Dakota. Boundaries were occasionally resurveyed and boundary stones replaced or restored, depending on their condition. Examples of historic boundary markers: Dreieckige, Germany, Gallery.